Let's dive deeper into all of this with commentator Brad Polumbo. Brad, it's great to speak with you. What a week, what a roller coaster of emotions we've all been on. But let's start with the failure of the Secret Service. It seems every day we're learning more and more about what happened and more about their failures. What do you make of it?
It's the big failing I've ever seen. And honestly, the incompetence and ineptitude is staggering. It reaches a proportion I didn't know was possible for a supposedly elite federal law enforcement agency. Everything from them having flagged the shooter as a person of interest well before the shooting, to have the shooter having been spotted, having people tell officers that, hey, there's a guy up there with a gun for minutes before the actual shot gets fired. And then it comes down to essentially a stroke of luck. Donald Trump turning his head at the exact second, and thank God he did, because I would be so worried about our country right now if he had been killed. And no matter whether you support him or not, nobody should ever want something like that to happen. But the Secret Service to have decided not to station somebody on the roof because it was slightly sloped. Are you joking? Is this funny? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. They go on sloped roofs all the time, and securing the president and preventing him from getting shot at by a sniper is a little bit more important than risking an injury from the Secret Service having to go out on a sloped roof. I mean, Secret Service agents had to jump in front of bullets. So if you ask me, what's more dangerous here? I mean, the Secret Service has a huge reckoning that it needs to have, and it needs to be heavily investigated to find out, how did this happen? Because this is a failure of truly epic proportions.
And that is the key question. How did this happen? And we cannot let this happen again. There needs to be a full investigation, obviously, and that is happening. But what we have heard from the Secret Service Director, Kimberly Cheadle, who was appointed to the role by President Joe Biden in 2022 and is reportedly friends with Jill Biden, under her direction, the agency set a 30% quota for female hires. Now, not target, but quota. Let's take a look.
To expand hiring, they're aiming to have 30% women recruits by 2030, and even allowed YouTube influencer Michelle Carre to train with agents.
But I'm very conscious, as I sit in this chair now, of making sure that we need to attract diverse candidates.
You know, as a woman who believes in equality, I don't see the value in this, to the point it could actually be a little bit dangerous, because at the risk of stating the obvious, we are built differently to men. What do you make of this quota?
It's identity politics insanity, to the point of, like you said, actually being dangerous. I mean, look, I think women should be able to compete just like men for any other job. I would never support sexist discrimination in the Secret Service or anything else, but women and men are built differently. And the Secret Service, in pursuit of identity politics and feminist quotas, it instituted lower physical standards for female officers. They don't have to meet the same 1.5 mile run time, the same number of sit-ups, of push-ups, of crunches, these kinds of things. And that makes no sense. If women can meet the same standard that is necessary for the job, then of course they should be able to be agents. If there needs to be a height requirement, then men or women who meet the height requirement should be allowed to be it. And you know what? That might mean that you don't have 50%. You don't have perfect equality or equity. But you know what? That's okay. When it comes to matters of literal life and death, like who's going to be protecting the president and the vice president and the first lady, and there is an important role for some female Secret Service officers in, for example, the protection of the first lady. You don't want men going into the bathroom with her, right? But to have identity politics at the forefront of your operations as a supposedly elite security force is madness. Merit should be the only consideration, because we're literally talking about matters of life and death here.
Absolutely. Well said. Now, look, we've been hearing from the Democrats that we need to tone down the language. And of course, the rhetoric has become too heated. But let's look at the Democrats who actually tried to strip Donald Trump of his Secret Service protection. Just 3 months ago, Mississippi Congressman Benny Thompson introduced legislation designed to strip convicted felons, aka Donald Trump, of Secret Service protection, which was supported by other Democrats, including Jasmine Crockett. It's no wonder that people were not all that surprised that someone tried to take a shot at Donald Trump when there have been people openly calling for his protection to go. What do you make of this?
How sick and twisted do you have to be to want to remove security protection from your political opponents so that they're at the mercy of would-be assassins? I mean, I disagree with a lot of people very strongly. I don't ever want to see harm come to them or their families.
Absolutely.
To actually use your status as a member of Congress to try to take away the Secret Service protection of a Republican ex-president, it's just a deeply morally questionable thing to do. It doesn't cost them anything to have him have Secret Service protection. It costs taxpayers, but that's actually the rare thing I'm happy to pay for the government to do. But for them to go out of their way in pursuit of a partisan, vindictive vendetta against Trump to endanger the safety of not just him, but of his family and of the other people at that rally. I mean, if he hadn't had Secret Service there, nothing would have stopped the shooter from shooting again until he hit the president. I mean, the Secret Service were valiant and courageous in the sense that many of the officers stepped up in front of the president and put their bodies on the line. They totally botched many strategic and tactical things, but to not have Secret Service for an ex-president just because you hate him is a delusional, dangerous, and deeply evil thing to try to do. I mean, to me, it just shows how partisan and how tribal and just vindictive some people in our politics have become. It's really disturbing stuff.
Absolutely. Well said. Now let's look at some of the reaction to what happened on Saturday, because most people who were kind-hearted have been praying for Donald Trump and for his family, because what happened on Saturday was absolutely shocking. But unfortunately, that's not the reaction we are seeing from everyone. Let's take a look.
Do you condemn the shooter shooting Donald Trump?
No. Not here, not on this program, not in front of these people. Absolutely
You do not condemn a deranged shooter shooting Donald Trump.
You are truly just a child. This is not.
Actually,
this is not a competition
you know
here.
what,
We're
Charlie?
just trying to be decent human
You know what,
beings.
Charlie? It's not actually the behaviour of a child. It's the behaviour of somebody who's completely lost his moral compass.
And how charming is this person who said they are sad that the shooter missed?
Absolutely. You guys are out here on the heels of the attempted Trump assassination. Can I get your reaction to what happened the other day?
Well, it's a shame the person missed, but it's ironic that the shooter was also a Republican.
Brad, I see that and I feel really shocked, and I feel conflicted about even playing it on this show because I don't want to give them airtime, but at the same time we have to call this out because there is a real dangerous tone that exists where people don't see Donald Trump as a human being anymore. I've had hate mail for standing up for the fact that he wasn't killed on Saturday. It is just unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. And the irony is not lost on me that the second person you showed has the rainbow bandana around her face. So much love, so much tolerance, so much progress, right? I mean, look, you have to be sick and twisted to want to see your political opponents die. And we're not just even talking about Trump, though, of course, that applies to him. We're talking about an innocent man who was killed in the background, literally shielding his children with his body from bullets. A man who was a father, who was a volunteer firefighter, lost his life. And you have people like Destiny, the liberal YouTuber with millions of followers that you played in that clip there. You have them basically saying they don't care because they support Trump and Trump really bad. And to me, it's sick and it's twisted. It shows that how tribalism and partisanship can rot and corrode not just one's brain, but also one's soul. Because if you become, and they say, well, Republicans won't condemn political violence, and that might be true for some Republicans out there, but it's literally kindergarten level morality. Two wrongs don't make a right. And you're not supposed to descend into the mud with people and become everything you say you're against. But that's what we're seeing. That is what we're seeing some people do after this tragedy. I mean, are we really at the point where people can't just condemn an attempted assassination?
Yeah.
Your moral compass is just broken beyond repair if you find yourself in that situation. Although I am grateful that I would say most mainstream Democrats have, of course, and this is an extremely low bar. Like, I can't believe we're even here, but most mainstream Democrats, in terms of elected officials, have condemned the shooting and wished Trump well. And obviously that's an incredibly low bar, but at least they didn't trip over it.
Yeah, look, I can't believe it that even after the president was shot in the face, we still have people that say horrendous things. I was up in the cafe yesterday and someone said to me, oh, you know, Donald Trump, he walked out with a bandage on his ear. Do you think he's milking this? I said, no, I think he was shot in the face. How do those attitudes, like, what else can he do?
I don't know, man. Look, if I'm getting shot in the head, I'd milk it too. I don't think it's milking it to wear a bandage when your ear's been nearly blown off by a centimeter, right? And it's just ridiculous. The same people are being like, wow, well, I heard people unironically criticizing Trump for saying fight, fight, fight on camera after he'd just been shot at. And they're like, he shouldn't use that rhetoric. And I'm like, he was just shot at. You people are
unbelievable.
insane.
You know, I think I know the clip you're referring to. It was on CNN, and I want to talk to you about the media's role in this because CNN's coverage of the attempted assassination on Donald Trump was just appalling. But let's look at some of the comments afterwards. And I played that clip earlier where a CNN host freaked out at the concept that all avenues need to be investigated. Let's just play a little bit more.
As a military member, one of the things that we do is we what if scenario everything in the world, right? That's how.
I know, but I don't know. I'm just saying,
when
if it's the what if that you talk about maybe in an investigation, and the what if that you are presenting on live television. I don't know. It's just.
Well, so listen, I'm a public official.
Yes.
Anything that I do, anything that I say in the public. I don't try and hide it in private. I think that the American people need transparency, accountability, and accessibility to the elected officials, not to try and hide behind what we want to look at. And I also think that if the American people know that we're questioning these things as well, it puts them at rest to at least know, why aren't they at least looking into this? Why? We should look at every single situation which is of this significance. We should look at it from multiple angles to ensure that nothing is left out, nothing could be potentially claimed as being covered up. Yeah. We need to have more transparency to the American people, and I think that's what everyone deserves.
Brad, what's your reaction to this?
Well, it's really quite something to watch this CNN host freak out and try to shut down her guest, who, let's be clear, is not some random talking head like me, right? This is Corey Mills, who was a former sniper in the military who worked on security details for VIPs, including the vice president some years ago. So this guy knows what he's talking about. And he's saying that the strategic failing is so extreme and so glaring and so shocking that an investigation should at least consider all the possibilities, including some degree of intentionality. Obviously, there's no evidence of that now. Obviously, we don't want to jump to conspiracy theories. Obviously, things that can be explained through incompetence, usually that's the explanation rather than something complex and sinister and conspiratorial. But all he's saying is we should investigate every avenue and every possibility. And they're like, oh, no, you can't say that. Meanwhile, the same network spewed conspiracy theories about Donald Trump and Russia for years.
Absolutely.
No regrets and very few corrections. But and he's not engaging in a conspiracy theory, right? He's not saying, yes, this is a setup, this was staged, or this was intentional, or anything like that. No conspiracy. He's just saying we should investigate every possibility. To me, I'm a person who never leaps to, the most extreme conclusions or the conspiracies, but I at least want all avenues explored when 100%. We're talking about one of the biggest security failures I've ever seen. Why wouldn't you want everything investigated? Because now you can never say never. We live in a crazy time. We've seen crazy things, and there's not a 0% chance. Obviously, we have no evidence. We don't want to get ahead of the facts, but why would anyone who's a journalist be opposed to simply investigating all avenues and all possibilities? To me, that just seems like common sense.
Yeah, you think so. That doesn't appear to be a lot of common sense at CNN. But finally, Brad, I could talk to you for hours. It's been confirmed that US President Joe Biden has COVID-19. He's tested positive. Let's look at Joe Biden's interview, the first one that he gave after Donald Trump was almost murdered on stage, and just see if you can make sense of what he's saying.
if you were to continue to run and be officially nominated, what happens if you have another episode like we saw during the debate?
What happens if another?
Yeah, what happens if you have another performance on that on that level?
I don't plan on having another performance on that level.
All right.
Did you get that? Is it clear?
Look, I've seen that clip about 10 times, and I still have no idea what the word in his first answer was supposed to be. But wow, just wow. I mean, this guy is he's not reassuring us at all. He continues to make gaffes and missteps every single time he opens his mouth or is recorded anywhere. And if you're going out there and you're trying to convince us that this guy is A-OK, sharp as a tack, can totally handle the nuclear codes, then you've just drunk the Kool-Aid. You are sunk into delusion beyond repair. I don't know how many times people need to see Biden slur his words or call out to dead people before they wake up and smell the roses. If Democrats had any clue, if they wanted any hope of avoiding Trump being the next president, which you'd think as Democrats would be their main objective, they would get this guy out of the race. They would convince him to step aside, and they would put up literally anyone else. But they've put themselves in a real bind by picking Kamala Harris, who's also not very popular, as his vice president. And Biden, I think, has a bit of a God complex. I've said this before. He thinks he's the only one who can save America from Trump or something ridiculous. And I don't see him giving it up. So you can expect, like, look, nobody ages backwards. He's only going to get worse. So even between now and November, you can expect more of this, and honestly, for it to continue to get worse. And then imagine over the next 4 years, if he were reelected, which looks unlikely, but if he were, how much more he would decline. I mean, by the end of it, I think that he would just be totally incoherent 100% of the time, instead of just, 50% of the time, or wherever he's at now. It can always get worse. Never forget it.
Absolutely. Brad Polumbo, so great to speak with you. Thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour.
Thank you.